It's embarrassing that our eldest only finished high school, while the younger one achieved so much. The voice that demeaned me belonged to my mother at our family home. My father nodded along, and my brother, caught in the middle, beamed proudly knowing he was being praised. My brother went to a prestigious university, while I started working after graduating high school. My parents always praised my brother, calling him an elite who had made efforts. Why did such a gap form between us? I am Nicole, a 26-year-old web designer, born in a somewhat rural town. I lived with my grandparents, parents, and younger brother, Sean. Sean was the long-awaited boy, born 7 years after me, and naturally, our parents adored him. They always prioritized his needs and whims over mine, often leaving me feeling neglected. Moreover, our parents never treated us equally. For Sean's birthday, they'd give him big toys as gifts, but since my birthday was close to Christmas, I'd get just one gift combined for both occasions. Usually something educational like study tools. When Sean started playing soccer as a club activity, our parents attended every practice and game to support him. I was in the tennis club during middle school, but even at my final match before retiring, neither parent came because they had to drive Sean around. There were days I felt like crying, but Sean comforted me. He even said to our parents, "That's not true. Nicole is smarter and she even teaches me. She is really amazing." And a few days after my last match, he made me a small bouquet from flowers he picked in the park, showing his gentle nature. Our grandparents also found our parents' favoritism excessive, and often reprimanded them, but by the time I graduated high school, both had passed away one after the other. Sean always stood up for me, but especially our mother didn't find it amusing. She grew strict with him, threatening, "If you keep siding with your sister, I'll make you stand outside." Especially as winter began and snow started falling. I didn't want my much younger brother to suffer, so all I could say was, "You don't have to worry about me anymore." Eventually, Sean stopped defending me, and under our parents' protection, he enjoyed his days filled with sports and studies. After our grandparents' consecutive funerals, my parents simply refused to let me go to university due to a lack of savings. I had wanted to study design, but that was not allowed, and I had to find a job immediately after high school. However, as a final act of defiance, I left our hometown for an office job at a design firm that handled websites for beauty salons and nail shops. Although it was a small company, I couldn't give up on my dream, and managed to get a position as a designer's assistant. While doing office work, I observed the professional designers daily. The harsh reality was difficult, but it only motivated me more to become a web designer myself. My alone time for study became precious. I minimized visits home because whenever I did, my parents would mock me. So I stayed away and spent weekends studying design and enhancing my software skills through online courses. This effort was recognized at work, and one day, I was integrated into the design team. My dedication was well known among the designers, who introduced me to useful materials and connections. By the third year, I had grown enough to be trusted with jobs as a web designer. 8 years after high school, as I became accustomed to my job as a web designer, news of Sean's college entrance exams arrived. He aimed for a famous private university in the city, aspiring to enter its medical school. Thanks to his diligent studies, his success was almost guaranteed. Recalling our childhood, I wanted to support him if possible and told him so. A few months later, Sean passed and got into the famous medical university. I congratulated him warmly. "Sean, I'm truly happy for you. I heard how hard you worked, attending tutorials daily." Sean thanked me modestly, but then I received a particular request. Actually, the private medical school requires a donation. It's optional, but Dad and Mom say we'd be looked down upon if we didn't contribute because we're from the countryside. It's better to pay, right? But you know our family's just scraping by with my tuition and living expenses for college. Sean said he would earn some of his living expenses through part-time jobs. But I knew the immense study load waiting for him in medical school would make that difficult. I wanted to contribute, but with our father being a regular employee and our mother working only twice a week, it was a stretch. The tuition for a private medical university was hard enough. They probably counted on using my savings, which they should have just stated outright. Despite deepening my disdain for our parents, I readily agreed to his request and helped with the donation and related expenses for his entrance. Thus, Sean moved to an apartment close to his university, and his new life began. The place where Sean lived wasn't far from my house, so he could rely on me anytime. Maybe he was enjoying his university life too much, as his replies to me were always curt. Yet he would contact me asking for things like, "I want to eat this," or "I need this, please send it." So I found myself sending parcels or lending money, doing financial favors our parents couldn't. We occasionally went out to eat as siblings, but even then, Sean was unresponsive, ignoring me and fiddling with his smartphone, except during meals. Whatever I asked, the only response was, "I'm busy with my studies." His indifferent reactions left me increasingly perplexed. At some point, he began to treat me coldly. Even today's dinner felt like I was forcing him to join me. To lighten the mood, I brought up our home in a deliberately cheerful tone. "Well, I guess Mom and Dad are just happy seeing you doing well." Suddenly, Sean looked at me sharply and distorted his face as if to scoff through his nose. "Of course. I'm at a famous medical university. And you are just a high school grad designer, right? They aren't worried about you at all. You have a job that doesn't even need qualifications." His harsh words made me feel the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean by no qualifications?" "Just what it sounds like, a web designer, right? Nowadays, anyone can do that with a little search on the internet. Some of my classmates can even create websites. Aren't you embarrassed by such a job? Maybe you should study a bit and get some qualifications. Though that might be tough with just a high school brain." "Sean, what's gotten into you?" "I study seriously for my job. Don't mock me without knowing anything." Sean glared at me irritably and grimaced. "Dad and Mom say it every day on the phone. They say it's great how the eldest son got into medical school. But it's embarrassing that their older daughter only finished high school. I'm contacting you and going out to eat with you because they asked me to. Just so the embarrassing sister won't feel too inferior. The future renowned doctor has to take care of you, they say. My parents have always compared me to Sean. He was smart and kind, a reliable brother, but they would directly say to me, "Nicole, you're stupid and slow, and you're not thoughtful." Those memories flash back, making it difficult for me to breathe. Dizziness struck me from the shock, and I lowered my head to endure it. Yet, thinking I was crying, Sean just chuckled lightly and said, "I'm leaving now," then stood up and left. Having gained the freedom of college life, Sean had changed completely. surrounded by geniuses that he never had back home, probably affirmed the praise he received from our parents. Daily hearing from them that Sean is a real genius. And he will definitely become a great doctor. It's no wonder he believed it all. They included plenty of derogatory remarks about me in those praises, which influenced Sean too. Around Christmas, as usual, I went back home for a visit. I was told to bring Sean, who still maintained his attitude of ignoring me. This was his first visit back since he started studying and practicing intensely. Perhaps that's why, as soon as we arrived, my parents clung to him and ignored me. Home was ready with luxurious dishes waiting for Sean, and at night, a big party was held with neighbors, relatives, and Sean's former classmates who remained in the area. Caught up in the atmosphere, Sean began loudly bragging to everyone around. "Mom keeps saying to come back home. But I'm studying at that famous private university, what's more, in the medical faculty. It's understandable I can't come back often. Plus, studying at the medical faculty isn't something I can do alone. We need to work in teams, so if I'm the only one to return home, it puts everyone else in a tough spot. Everyone comes to me with their questions, so give me a break." I was in the kitchen, pretending to prepare dishes, but I could hear Sean's loud brags clearly. Though our parents and relatives, who had always lavishly praised Sean, might ignore it. The neighbors and former classmates probably didn't appreciate his boastful talk. Perhaps tired of his grandstanding, a man in my neighborhood brought up a conversation, maybe thinking to do me a favor. "By the way, Nicole is also working hard, isn't she? In design, I believe." But Sean and our parents unanimously and flatly denied it. "No way, Nicole is hopeless. She seems to be trying, but..." "That's right, our eldest is just a high school grad, which is quite embarrassing. There's a big gap between her and Sean." In a room filled with former classmates and neighbors with high school diplomas, it's surprising how Nicole can still come home. Laughing loudly, Sean continued as both our parents chuckled. I was just frozen, feeling a rush of anger rising the next moment. "Good for you, Nicole. From next year, you won't have to show your face here anymore." "Understood," I managed to say, my voice trembling. Despite the apologetic faces of the onlookers. "If you say so, I'll take you up on that. I'm never coming back here again." The anger inside me bubbled like magma, but the words that came out were utterly cold. "Don't ever show your face here again." On the way to the station, I nearly screamed, holding back the overwhelming emotions. My parents had, at least to some extent, worked and raised 2 children. If I valued my career, I couldn't maintain such relationships. Several months after my decision, just as the new academic year was about to begin. "Hey, what's happening with my tuition fees?" Sean's voice was tentative, tinged with panic. I responded calmly. "I supported last year's. The entrance fee, donation, and first year's tuition, remember? That's not it. I mean for the second year. This year's fees, they're urging me from the university to pay soon." "What's going on?" "What do you mean, what's going on?" I never said I'd pay. I could tell Sean was speechless on the other end. "Actually, I was only supposed to pay for the donation, right? That can't be." "But you know, my living expenses. My ability to save significantly stemmed from switching to a major design firm. Having informed my family about my job change. Days later, I also refused further contact with my parents. Sean's calls became daily, filled with whining. if there had been a sincere apology. Among the messages, there were astonishing ones. People who look down on others shouldn't become doctors. With this, I cut off all contact with my family and welcomed a new season. I had been supporting not only my brother's tuition but also sending money home. Although my brother was talented, he had squandered any substantial money. One day, perhaps stressed, my father caused an incident on the bus during his commute. My mother tried to work, but with only limited part-time experience. My parents attempted to contact me through relatives, but the content they wanted mediated was invariably demanding and authoritative in tone. The relatives recognized that the problem lay with my parents, and gradually they asked me not to worry about it and ceased communicating on their behalf. This led to a thinning of ties with my family, allowing me to return to a peaceful life. According to the relatives, bad rumors were circulating about my brother, who had become a recluse, and my unemployed father, whose unsavory appearance further alienated them. Unable to bear the situation, my mother eventually disappeared from view and now, I'm told, is uncontactable. Left behind, they survive meagerly on welfare, without any income. Warm interactions with neighbors might have offered some solace. But given their behavior, it's unlikely they receive much sympathy from those around them. As for me, my career in design is progressing well. I have secured participation in significant projects that will prominently feature my name. Using this as a stepping stone, I've launched a long-held plan, that is, preparing for university entrance exams. As funds accumulate smoothly and my current work stabilizes, I plan to begin this new challenge. I'm also considering setting up my own business, wanting to learn not only about design but also about management. I'm excited about these new ventures.